Is the idea of total war inhumane? Many would say so. Total war differs from the traditional concept of war in the way that its goal is to finish the fighting as soon as possible by bringing the battle closer to home, literally. Under total war, people were not to destroy not only the enemy, but also the enemy's homes, resources, and families. The concept was not created in the US, but the US was home of its revival after a long period of formal warfare. Though total war as developed by the US is brutal and inhumane, it was seen by the government as completely necessary to save the lives of our soldiers and to bring us out of martial struggles sooner. The American form of total war dates back to the last years of the Civil War. General William Tecumseh Sherman and the Union Army had succeeded in pushing General Joseph Johnston and his 53,000 men back to Atlanta and trapping them. After arrangements had been made, the Confederate Army was forced to leave, and Atlanta, the center of Confederate communication, belonged to the Union. Not long after that, Sherman was given orders by Lincoln to vacate Atlanta, for his troops were needed in Savannah. Sherman came to the solution that in order to keep the Confederates from returning to the potential base, he had it destroyed. He allowed his men to run rampant, burn buildings, and loot homes. Any remaining civilians were killed and slaves were stolen.
Hey, what are you doing? Is that necessary?
This is war.
Sherman, recognizing this as an important tactic to crush morale, decided to continue his massive destruction on any cities or residents he passed on his way to the coast. Never again was war seen as a gentleman's affair. War had reached home.
Though the U.S. was late in entering World War I, it had seen its share of massive brutality. The German-created mustard gas had been put into use and the age of chemical warfare had begun. Mustard gas was the most effective way to kill off a massive group of men. Only a small amount could be added to an explosive shell to become potent. Even after a mustard gas explosion, the gas would remain for several weeks. Any person exposed to the gas could barely be treated by doctors.
God!
I think the internal bleeding is getting to his throat. The patient would be dead in a matter of weeks. The U.S., seeing its effects, tried to develop their own chemicals to counter it. A few years after the war had ended, the memory of the terrible gases used in combat led to the signing of the Geneva Protocol in 1925, which banned the use of chemical warfare. World War II. It was a time of desperate measures. The amphibious invasions had been successful, but thousands of American lives had been lost. There had to have been a way to win the war with few American deaths. The government had gathered the greatest minds to create the ultimate weapon of destruction. One of the scientists enlisted was the famed physicist, Albert Einstein. Funded by Roosevelt, the project was placed under the direction of J. Robert Oppenheimer.
Just really quickly.
After a few years of work and a successful test at the Trinity test site at Alamogordo, New Mexico, the bomb was ready to be used in war. Though the bomb was ready after Germany's surrender, the Empire of Japan was not ready to back down yet. The first target was Hiroshima, Japan, a city virtually untouched by the wrath of war. The effect was tremendous, yet Japan still would not surrender. It was after the second dropping of the bomb in Nagasaki that Japan surrendered unconditionally. At the cost of Japanese civilians, thousands of American lives were spared.
"30 years after World War II, the U.S. was heavily involved with world affairs. In the attempts to fulfill the policy of containment, the U.S. sent troops to aid the southern Vietnamese forces to rid Vietnam of its communist influence, the Viet Cong. The prolonged fighting led to many types of strategy, one of which was adopting the aspects of the Viet Cong guerrilla warfare. Since it was difficult to distinguish between southern Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, the U.S. troops opened fire on all civilians, just in case they were only posing to be on their side. They were on a shoot first and ask questions later policy.
I just fired, sir. I couldn't tell if she was Viet Cong or a farmer.
They were clearly civilians.
Sir, sometimes the Viet Cong dresses as civilians.
And that justifies murder?
I was only following orders, sir.
The lack of proper warfare conduct was seen all over the world due to the popularity of television broadcast.
Are you crazy?
Oh, the station's gonna get a journalist prize for this. I want you to go over there and get that body. What? You know, for the audience. Whoa, that was beautiful. Oh, that was a beautiful explosion. I wonder if I have enough film to get to work. So, you got anything to say to the folks back home?
Come on, man, we got a war going on here. Look out! Oh, damn, that was close.
The brutalities of battle were seen up close by American people in their living rooms.
A truckload of refugees goes up in smoke. Women, children, babies. Some are dead, some are not dead. By evening, government spokesmen are saying another grand victory has been won in Quang Tri province. The situation is once again stabilized. But there will be more fighting and more words. Words spoken by generals, journalists, politicians. But here on Route 1, it's difficult to imagine what those words can be. There's nothing left to say about this war. There's just nothing left to say. Bob Simon, CBS News, Route 1.
This led to the lack of support for such brutality. The policy of total war as we know it died with the public exposition. No longer did American people want to see their country involved with such barbaric means of combat.